Welcome to the SufferSooner podcast. Follow along with three average people doing some above average things. We have jobs, families, and we enjoy pushing ourselves to be the best that we can be in gravel, triathlon, and endurance sports. We've made mistakes, conquered what was once impossible to us, and pushed through barriers to come out the other side stronger, smarter, and more willing to find the truth in the dark places that only suffering can take you. Sometimes in life you have to be willing to push yourself in an attempt to get it over faster, and thus you may just have to suffer sooner. Well, welcome to episode 13.
Lucky 13.
Lucky 13. So we're not going to be joined with Serena today. She had a bunch of kids sports stuff to do and just life's getting hectic. So it's just going to be me and Danny today going on this week. And so today we are talking about the mental side of training. Just like, my thing is like, I mean, especially as you get closer to these big events like Unbound and, you get close to an Ironman event or even a 70.3 or heck, even your local, Olympic distance triathlon. Sometimes you have those little things of doubt that are entering your head, right? And you're just kind of like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, what am I going to do? What if my bike explodes? Like, what if I get a flat tire? What if my shoes don't fit? Like, what if I get a blister? It's like all this what if stuff that kind of the mental part of doing these events that you just, you have to deal with on a daily basis.
The negativity can creep in fast, can it?
It can be one of those things like a monkey on your back. It's just, it is there. And to say that, we've gotten through this training or through a lot of our training without having to deal with this would be naive for anybody. Like I think mental training is probably, next to nutrition, it is the fourth discipline of triathlon. It is the next big thing when you have to do any kind of long ultra event. Is that mental training is what you're also training along with your physical training of doing these efforts.
I think what makes the mental side of this so hard is it's not, you talk about mental training. You can't go train the mental side of the sport like you can train the physical side of the sport. It's not like you can go, okay, on Saturday,
I'm going to go do a 40-minute mental training.
I'm going to put myself in a mental box and try to get out. Like, it doesn't work that way, So I think that's what makes it so hard. And honestly, it's the same, like it's the same as just life, right? Like when things get rough, like you don't realize it until you're really in it. And then it's like, oh, now how am I getting out of this? And so I will tell you, so having coached competitive sports for a lot of years before getting into the endurance side of things, I will tell you, we used to tell all of our athletes about the mental side of the game that, when you play a sport long enough and you are physically adapted, your fundamentals are solid, your talent is, nearing its potential. What separates the cream of the crop, if you will, is the mental side. It really is. When you can put yourself in a better space mentally than your opponent, you will find a way to win and they will find a way to lose. And I think it's no different in the endurance side of things. And the more I get into this, I realize like just figuring out how you're going to get through the training, like it can be such a grind. It can get really dark really fast. And when you figure out how to sort of work your way out of these things, it turns race day into something you can manage. So you're right, Travis. It is definitely a discipline that gets overlooked and I think does not get enough credit. So.
No, by far. Like, I mean, how many times have we, gone to a workout and just been like, oh man, I don't want to do this right now at all. And like, I'm sure like you're like me, like pacing around the basement around your trainer going like, I don't know if I want to do this. I just, and you finally get the nerve, you throw your leg over the, bike and you start doing the workout. And like, it was like 20 to 30 minutes of putzing around trying to figure out how you were going to throw your leg over the bike. You start riding and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
You know, like just our minds are just a tangled web of just craziness sometimes about just not wanting to do anything other than what we know we should be doing. So
Yeah, I think that you do. I mean, I'm similar. I find myself I'll procrastinate. I'll come, especially if it's a Saturday workout day, and well, every Saturday is a workout day. But if it's a day that I'm just not feeling the motivation and I'm just not really in it, and, hey, my workout's supposed to start at, we say we're going to meet at 8 a.m. or something. How many times you get a text from me? I'm like, I'm kind of not feeling. How about we do 8:30? How about 9? Like, that's a pretty good sign. I'm just procrastinating because mentally I am not there. I mean, I don't usually have too many late Friday nights anymore, so it's usually because I'm just doubting the workout for the day, and just like you said, 99% of the time, once you get out there, you're fine. Like, you
yeah,
your the blood gets pumping, your the brain fog kinda clears a little bit, and it may turn into the best workout of the day, and it may be the thing that or the best workout of the week, and it may be the thing that sort of flips you to where you don't have that sort of self-doubt creep in for a while, and I think that's where having training partners and coaches and people around you is so huge because you can play off of, how many times when we were doing Ironman training was one of us was in a really negative spot, but only because we knew the other one was not going to bail on the workout. So it's like,
yep,
I show up because Travis is going to be there. 'Cause he won't bail. He won't give me the out. So you
yep.
show up and you get it done. So
Yeah, and it may not be a pretty, workout, may not be the best workout you've ever completed, but it's, one more notch on your journey to completing that thing that you're training for.
yeah.
So, I mean, and the thing that I try to express with mental training is that you have to do these hard things so that when you are exposed to something hard again, your mind goes, "Oh, um, we've been through something that's been this hard before and we kind of lived. So we can do this." That's what you're doing with mental training. Like, how many times have we go to Pratt, Kansas, it's a headwind down there, 40 mile an hour.
Mhm.
I still don't complain about headwinds
Never.
because I'm like, you guys don't even like, nobody even knows what a headwind is, like until you've experienced an 8-hour day of 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like I think back on that day, and it's like it's funny, like you think back on, some of your accomplishments that seemed like extraordinarily hard at the time, and you're just like, I don't even know how I did that. And all I think when I think back about that day is how loud the wind is in my head. It's just this loud wind noise that's all I remember for the first time I went down there and did that ride. So I mean, it's just about doing these hard things. I mean, like, how many times have we like climbed, the steep hills around here? The first time you climb it, you're like, oh my gosh, this thing
Mhm.
is, super hard. And then you're like, try it again. You're like, oh,
That
kind of
wasn't so
wasn't as
bad.
hard as it wasn't so bad. So it's the whole idea of like, you're not trying to go from 0 to 100. You're like, of mental hard stuff, you're just going from like 0 to 5% mentally hard. Like, you're just getting your toe into uncomfort. You're not, and then the next thing, it's not so the next time you get there, it's not so uncomfortable anymore, right?
Yeah, it's a lot like when that's where it really is like training. Like, it's the same thing with a VO2 max workout or some really tough threshold workout. It's like you physically get stronger the more of those you do over time, and then you realize, oh, I can hold that 300-watt effort for an extra 30 seconds. That's not so bad. And you start finding ways to convince yourself you can get it done versus telling yourself you can't. And I think the mental side is exactly that. I mean, we just went on this ride last weekend, and we hadn't been on a lot of these roads ever, and it felt like every time you turned a corner, there's another hill full of chunky gravel that you gotta climb up.
Yeah.
And it's like it gets demoralizing, and then you're just like, "Man, if I could just get, like, a road with some relief, I could be okay." But it's never there. It never feels like it's there. But, um, I think it's days like that where if you just find a way to grind through it, and then that doubt will disappear, and then all of a sudden things become, you become optimistic. You're like, "Hey, You know what? I think we should go back and do that route next weekend, and things like that start to creep into your head. So,
Yeah,
good
exactly.
stuff.
Yeah, it's just getting that, I love that saying of just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's
Mm.
like, with any type of training, especially like VO2 max and those higher end training, it's a lot of times it's just being okay with the fact that it hurts that much. Like, it's not like it gets easy. Like my VO2 max and your VO2 max efforts, they hurt.
They
And
hurt a
it's
lot.
not, yeah, they hurt a lot. And just when you're like, oh, okay, that it's supposed to feel like that. And then you're like, oh, okay. But
See,
you
you
get
said
used
something.
to it.
You do, and you said something. We were out on a ride. You probably don't remember this. We were on a ride probably a couple years ago now. We had the road bikes out, and we were going up that little push, on interurban, the one that, somebody just got a tied for KOM on that recently. I think wasn't you.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Yeah, it was
So,
definitely you, I think. I think I
but
flagged it. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure because I'm sure
report.
that your wife
Yeah,
was helping you up
yeah, I had
there.
a draft off the car in front,
Yeah.
but we were just out riding on a I think it was just a group ride, and we were messing around on that hill, and I probably half wheeled you or something, and then you kinda took off, and then I took off, and then it turned into like a dead sprint to get to the top, and I remember the searing pain in the legs, and I gave up like that split second before, and then we got to the end there, and you were like, "Oh my gosh, I thought if I could just hold on just a little bit longer." He was like, "I thought you were gonna just keep holding on for one more second." And it's like it was just a mental battle to see who was gonna give into the searing pain first, and I lost that day because you had the experience and the prior training and having gone through this of like, all I have to do is last longer than him. I don't have to like I don't have to hold this for another 5 minutes. I just have to
Right.
last a split second longer and break him, and then he'll fall off. And I did. I fell off because I couldn't take it anymore. And it was more mental than physical.
Yeah, and you'll find that in racing too. I've been in plenty of races where it's just, on the day, like yes, there are some people that are going to be stronger than you, whatever. They're going to they're going to be passing you no matter what. But the people that are like around you, if you're mentally stronger and you can just hold out 1 second longer with him because it's not like when you gave up trying to hold my wheel,
Mhm.
it's not like you were like, "Oh, I'm gonna give up and I'm gonna hold, the back half of, his bike." No, you basically gave up
Pulled
and
the
shut
plug,
it all down. It
shut
was it was
down.
done. It was
Yep.
over.
Yep.
So you weren't coming back from that.
Yeah.
And all I had to do was just create space and
Yeah.
then it was you were
It was
I was
done.
almost done, but but like the thing is like in situations like that, when everybody is hurting and they're all hurting about the same, and it's just who gives up
Yeah.
sooner.
Yep.
And it's just, you just have to hold on. And it's, just, understanding that, it's not easy, um, for anybody out there and just you're just training for that, and that's why we have the adage, that we train hard to race easy, and
Yeah.
it's we try to put ourselves into these positions where we're uncomfortable and we're training the mental side of this.
Yeah, and I think it's also, throughout, especially in the last year, having gone through all the Ironman training we did a year ago and the Unbound 200 training, just putting yourself, as you said, putting yourself in those difficult situations. I found myself even in my work, my career, I found myself like things at work took a different perspective. Like, work can get really stressful, and your job stresses and deadlines and client commitments and all the things that can come with this, and all that stuff like had a whole different perception coming back after so many months of training and enduring these really tough events and long training days and the pain that comes with that. Like, the stress of work just didn't really exist anymore. And it's just kind of wild. Like, I used to tell people I work with about that all the time because, like, well, you don't, it doesn't seem like this bothers you as much. Like, no, it really doesn't. Like, go spend 15 hours out in the middle of the Flint Hills rolling around up and down gravel hills and tell me if this is going to bother you. Like this stuff's
Yeah.
easy now. And so just getting that sort of that hardened mental state that, you know, it doesn't hurt like it used to. I think that when you start to recognize that payoff is really really rewarding, and it kind of makes it worth it, but it's a lot of dark moments to get there for sure.
Yeah. I also try to mentally, like when we're out riding and I'm suffering, and I was suffering this last weekend too, just because it was starting to get hot, and I just, I'm not a very like I'm not an athlete that adapts very well to the heat. It takes me a long time, but I was just finding, I usually tend to mask my pain with humor. And so I was chastising you for finding all the roads that we could find near cornfields so we could check the corn out all the way from Iowa to Kansas.
And then we
Like,
circled one hill and like we basically rode it
yeah,
twice.
we went up and down. We went on the north side of it, we went on the east side of it, and then we went on the south side of it. And I was like, "How many times are we gonna climb this thing
Yeah.
before we can be done?" I'm like, I'm done with this hill." Like, I'm like, there, you know, unless we approach it from the west, we've conquered this
Yeah.
thing. There's nothing more to do. So, just finding that beauty in the suffering of just, like maybe you deal with stuff with humor, or maybe you just like you look at the view and you just, um Serena's great. Serena and Britta, they always like to use the we chose to do this, or we choose to do this stuff. We get to do this is always a thing. It's
That
kind of
is a
like a
good one.
humbling thing. It's
Yeah,
just that understanding that, we're the masters of our own destiny, and deciding whether or not, how much pain we're willing to tolerate. So just remembering that, that we are in control of this is a good thing. Helps you out mentally, just letting you know that, like, hey, yeah, I'm the only reason I'm out here. Like,
pretty
I'm,
much.
if I called and told Danny I wasn't gonna ride today, it's not like he would be like, "Well, that's it. I'm gonna come to your house and, destroy all your stuff then." It's like, no, he'd be like, "Okay." And so, like, and he would be out riding in those hills all by himself or whatever. So, it's just understanding that, like, we get to do this, we choose to do this, but like we're also finding you know, um, the beauty in the fact that this suffering like helps us, the suffering of, mental training helps you in other aspects of your life too, which
Yeah,
is good.
and it's growth, so it's a good
Yeah.
thing. So so how do I think that it's kinda easy to when you're not in that sort of mental state, like we're sitting here talking now, it's, kinda easy to reflect back and you say like, "Oh my gosh, look at how many times we've been in these difficult situations, either on a training ride or in an event or whatever," and it's like, okay, so you just every time you get through one of those, you chalk it up and you just get better and better through that type of training. But what about when you're in the moment, like, and you get that voice, that the negative tone, the negative, conscience, if you will? Like, how do you handle some of those kinds of things? Because I can tell you
Uh,
there's one thing that stops people from reaching their goals is listening to themselves sometimes.
yeah. So, this is there's like a quote, or I don't know, there was something I saw, and it was just basically like just saying, like, no one could ever be as hard on me as I am on myself, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, like, if our loved ones only heard the inner monologue that we struggle with sometimes on doing these things, they would be like, there is something seriously wrong with you people.
I'm
um
just gonna have to fess up that there might have been a ride, in Pratt, Kansas, where that inner monologue was not so inner because I was in the middle of a cornfield and nobody within 10 miles. So it's just gonna
yeah.
I'll admit it.
Right. So here's the thing. The thing that I do is I give my inner voice a name, and for all intents and purposes, we'll call him Steven, right? And so
Poor Steven.
I know. So so the whole idea is that if you give it a name, um, these are the tricks that I have found that helped, especially when that dark voice comes in. So if my inner voice is telling me that I can't do this and that I'm weak and I'm too fat, I'm too lazy, I'm too stupid, I'm whatever, I start to name. I'm like, oh, Steven, I am not fat. Steven, I am not weak. Steven, I am not like you're basically when you add the name to that, you're giving it there's like a psychology thing that you're able to turn that part off in your brain of that negative talk. And then what you do is the negative side, it has the name of Steven, right? And then the positive side, I use my own name, like Travis. I'm like, Travis, you can do this. Travis, you have trained for this. Travis, you can get through this. Travis, just get to the next cornfield. Travis, just get to the light post. Travis, you can do this. You're doing great, Travis. Like it's that kind of talk. And fortunately, or unfortunately, whatever, when I'm when I'm in these states, I'm usually by myself. So, but sometimes there are people around me, and when I'm talking to Steven, I don't. I was doing something, and what I don't know what race it was at, but I kind of yelled like I kind of yelled like you don't need to talk to me that way or something like that.
I'm
And
picturing the guy that's
somebody,
drafting
yeah,
your
and
wheel like,
somebody
"What
was like,
the
and
heck?"
somebody was like next to me and looked back, and I just kind of looked at him and said, "Oh, I'm not talking to you. Like I'm talking to myself."
You mind your own
And
business, don't you worry about what I'm
yeah,
doing.
yeah, and it sounds crazy, but I mean, it is a little
Um,
crazy, I guess. But
did he
to,
pull off and just call the cops right then? Like,
no,
I think I
no,
might have.
I can't remember what race it was at, but it was I did it, and sometimes you just it's I call it like the spiraling effect. It's
Yeah,
like that first negative word gets in there. Like, let's
yep,
say, like, oh, you can't do this. The next thing, oh, you should stop. Why are you even going on? Why are you even out here? Why are you even doing this? You're so stupid for signing up for that. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse.
yeah,
And like, and I think it was just one of those times. And I'm not saying like I'm mentally tough all the time. Like we have days where we're mentally stronger than other
yep,
days. And this day was like one of those days where I was a little bit weak and I just talked back
yeah,
out loud when there was
that's
somebody
funny.
around me and they just kind of looked at me and I was just like, "Oh yeah, I'm not talking to you. I'm sorry."
I'm sure the reality is that person's probably like, "I've been there, man. I've been there.
Yeah.
I know. Just
Exactly.
let it out, Travis, let it out." And
Yeah.
but I mean, all kidding aside, like, I think we all have kind of our own ways of dealing with this stuff, and I never really I never really thought about, like, how good sort of, like, the positive encouragement to yourself can be, like, if you just tell yourself, like you said, I mean, there's a couple ways to handle it, right? One is just, giving yourself positive feedback, "You're doing great, you got this," that kinda stuff, which, like, just talking about it now sounds kinda corny, but when you're in the middle of the effort, it's it is so good. What's even better is when there's like um, somebody watching and they yell at you. They happen to see your bib and they see your name on your bib and they yell your name because like
Yeah,
that
that's like
snaps
the
me out of
best
it.
thing that triathlon has
Oh my
ever done is
gosh.
put your name on the bib, and they're
Yes.
like, "Oh, good job, Travis," and you're like, "I
Oh
don't
my
know who
gosh.
you
I
are,
don't
but you
know who
just,
you
like,
are, but
saved my
yeah,
day.
oh my
Thank you so
gosh.
much."
That
Like
that that snaps me out. When I hear my name, it snaps me out of whatever funk, and it's just so refreshing.
yeah,
And I mean, like, I get like the chill of when you hear it because it's like, oh my gosh, that's just thank you. I needed that. But even just doing that for yourself, just talking to yourself in a positive way, how huge that can be. Because I don't think you don't. I mean, it just like I said, just talking about it now sounds so corny, but it's huge. And if you haven't done it, try it sometime because especially when you're
yeah.
really down, because you'll find it may just be the thing that gets you through it. So
Yeah, I've used that, like I said, just using that positive, talking, and like I say, you don't want to use your. And I think there's like, I'm not a full on psychologist or whatever. I just slept in a Holiday Inn
Holiday
last
Inn.
night.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
but the whole thing of using, somebody else's name as the antagonist to
Yeah.
your, positively helps you different, because if you're just sitting there going like, Travis, you're stupid, like, for saying, like, no, that doesn't help. Like,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
just saying exactly what you're thinking. And it's just
Yep.
like, that does not work. And then so the other thing too is like, sometimes it's a good idea to like just listen to that little voice a little bit every once in a while and just see like, sometimes it's like ego driven, right? Like,
Mm.
oh, you're not good enough, you're not, well enough, you didn't train enough, you're not doing all of this stuff. And you can kind of combat that with, if it's like a logic driven like that, it's like, well, I did train enough because I've been on multiple, of these long rides or long runs, or I've done, this many 70.3s, and this is another one that I'm doing. And it's just like, I've been here, I've done this stuff before, I've trained for this, so I am ready. And you can kind of silence the voice that way.
Yeah.
And then sometimes there's a fear, like, what happens if my tire explodes? And then you're just like, I like those ones the best,
Hmm.
because then I just go, okay, if something happens to my tire, one, it gives me a chance to rehearse it in my mind, and
Yeah.
then two, it gives me a chance to make sure I have, let's say, a patch kit or a tube or CO2. Like, let me make sure I have all that stuff, like, so
Yeah.
that if this thing, if this fear driven thing that I have, like, oh, if we'll say, like, popping a tire or something like that, if that's a genuine fear that I have, then it's good that I have that fear, because now let me go through the steps to solving it, so that the next time when that fear comes up in my brain, I go, oh, no, no, I've covered that. I already went through and done all that. So
It's a
like, don't
way of
even worry about
yeah.
it, Steven. We're good. Like,
Mental prep. Yeah. It's just a way of
yeah.
just knowing you got it covered. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I think again, I think it's so many different ways to handle it to kind of quiet that voice of doubt, and I think that a lot of people, well, everybody has their own way, right? But I will
yeah.
say, I think the there's something to be said for just find a way, even in those darkest moments, like find a way to get the positive thought,
Yep.
and
Because
if
that
you can,
one positive thought can
yeah.
just that can carry you
Oh my
through
gosh,
the dark time.
yeah,
Like,
and
just
and
that one little shred of hope.
yeah, and sometimes this is where I think, we like to joke around a lot with like SufferSooner, and like our motto on our group events this year is like no mercy, right? Because it's just
Yeah.
it just feels like we're constantly just hammering every time we go out on a group ride. But it's also like when you see that person next to you that where they're at, like you can see it, like you can see it in their body language, like they're not in a good spot. Like when you can give them that pick me up that they need, like
Yeah.
that's what I love about. I think we talked about this on other episodes about the sort of the gravel events seem to get more of that than any other event. And I don't maybe that's just my perception. I could maybe it's because that's where I've suffered the most, but I feel like I've gotten the most like positive encouragement in gravel events. I know it's big in the running community too, and especially in marathons, you get late. Like every time you pass somebody or somebody passes you, you're exchanging the good job, good work, you got it, that kind of stuff. But when you can tell somebody's in a dark spot, like I've had people, and I've done this for people where you just kind of pull up next to them, you just ride with them for a little bit. Like, hey, how you doing? Everything good? You need something? Like, want a snack? Whatever it is. And man, that's just help. It can help somebody get that doubt out of their head. So
Yeah.
good
Yeah,
stuff.
it's huge to, and I've had myriad of people do that to me too, where they just come up and ride next to you for a little while, and they just kind of like talk to you and it takes your mind off of it just for a moment of the darkness. And then you're just like, you know what? I can do this.
Yeah.
They'll be like, "Oh, you're doing good." And you're like, "You know what? They're right. I am doing good. I'm doing all right." And you
Yeah.
just kind of keep pedaling forward, because I mean, at the name of the game is to always just be moving forward.
Mm.
Just keep moving, and eventually the finish line will be there. Um,
I
so
still love the one slow miles are better than no miles. So
yep.
yeah, you keep
And
turning the
that's
cranks. Yep.
You just keep turning the cranks, and that's the only thing I think. I mean, that is like, I know people use mantras and stuff, they write them on their stem, and I just kind of just keep doing that. Like my mantra is always just move forward, just keep moving
Yep.
forward, just whatever you need to do. If you have to walk this hill, then walk the hill. If you have to, if you have to take a break, if my thing is always if I ever have to stop, there's always like a time limit on there. There's more pressure on me when I stop than there is when I'm like actually riding or running or doing something. So
Yeah.
because the I know for me, the mental aspect to me is once I stop, it's so much easier to stop again and
Oh,
again
yeah.
and again and again.
And then next thing you know, like the minutes pile. And again, it's not always about finish time or something like that, but like every one of those stops adds up. And
Yep.
it's have you ever gone back and looked at a race that you thought you did really good at, and but you knew you maybe stood a little too long at the aid station,
Yeah.
and then like I think we did this with some of my early events when I was like, "No, I didn't stay at the aid station very long," and you go back and look at Training Peaks, like, "You were there for 10 minutes." I'm like, "It didn't feel like 10 minutes." I
Yeah, it
didn't feel
never
I felt like
does. You're
no,
like,
but
"I was there for 30 seconds." And you're like,
that happened at Triple Bypass when we did that a couple years ago, like, I went back and looked at how much stoppage time we had when I'm like, "Oh, I think we were only there for maybe 2 or 3 minutes," and then we went on, and I look back, it was like 12 minutes. I'm like, "12 minutes? How is that even possible?" So
yeah,
I mean, because you just lose all sense of time and perception like that. So, but I think that's all comes back to just don't let yourself fall into that trap. And if you find yourself there, positivity and get yourself out. But
yep,
this is a lot about like sort of in the moment type of doubt and negativity, and that can happen both in a workout, it can happen in an actual race event, it can happen just when you're just out trying to do hard things, but sometimes it's more than just the in the moment type of thing. Sometimes there's like you run into sort of the series
oh,
of
here,
struggles, right? Yeah?
I've one last thing
Yeah?
for the in the moment
Oh,
thing.
in the moment, okay.
Yes. So I always tell my athletes, especially when they're like looking at their cycling computers
Yeah.
or running watches or whatever, only put data on there that
Oh,
is neutral to
good
you.
call.
If you're looking at your pace and you're going to be upset with how fast or slow you're going, then it's not something that you need to have on there.
That's a
You
great
know,
idea.
if you're worried about how long you've been out there and you have a lapse time on your cycle computer and you're like, "I've been out here for 4 hours, like, I've only gone 10 miles."
Yeah.
Like, all of that stuff is negativity. So what I usually tell my athletes is that you get you get power if you're on a bike, you get heart rate if you're on the bike or you're running, and that's it. Like you don't need anything else. There's there's few things else that you need if they want it like when I'm riding gravel, it's usually power, heart rate, and then the map. So I can
Mm,
see like, oh, like the wind is coming from the west. So
right.
is there any part where I'm gonna get a tailwind? Like when do I
You're
get the
looking for that
tailwind?
little bit to hang
Like,
on to.
yeah. So it's just like so then that can be the next little thing, like, oh, and look in like 5 miles, we turn left and we're
Mhm.
gonna be going with the tailwind. And it's gonna be so
It's gonna
great.
be so
And you're
good.
just like, it's gonna be so good and you're just like that's that I only have to go 5 more miles. So
Yeah.
sometimes that can be the positivity that you need to continue going. But
Yeah.
yeah, so like, take off that average speed or your, maybe you need, unless there's like a certain
Mhm.
unless you're on a race that these things are part of
Like, they
what
actually
you're
matter.
training for or
Yeah.
and they're matter and they're something that you need to focus on as an athlete. But other than that, if it's something that if you look at it and it brings a little bit of negativity in your mind, I would suggest that you don't, use it.
Yeah,
Don't bring it in there.
that's a really good suggestion then because I think a lot of people get wrapped up in the data and they will spiral themselves, and I think you and I talked about this before, like, we don't you don't put I don't think you put, elapsed time on your data
Yeah.
screen, and I
No.
do, like, because if I don't, then I'll do the math in my head anyway, and then you get into runner's math, and it's like, "Well, I think it was 3 hours ago, and the sun was this high off the horizon." But no, I have to have elapsed time because I use that as a motivation. But I know, like, for
I
you, you don't. Like, you don't wanna see it 'cause, like,
I use time
I'll
of day, that's it.
time of
I'm
day.
like, "I think
Yeah,
we started at, like, 2:30." Like, I think that's when the
that's
ride
funny.
started, I don't know,
Yeah,
and then I'm
yeah,
like, "Oh, it's 4:30, so we've probably been out here for, like, 2 hours,"
yeah.
you know?
I remember when we did Unbound last year, and I saw the elapsed time on there, and I saw it when it crossed 10 hours, and there was that brief moment of like, "Ugh," like, negative 10 hours, but then I used that, I flipped it, I'm like, "Hey, you know what? That means," and I looked at my total mileage, I scrolled to a different screen where I could see total mileage, and I knew I was more than halfway.
Yeah.
So I was like, "I I got it." Like, that's just a way that I use it to motivate myself, but
Yeah, and
this
I
is why
and
you
I
train.
don't even
Yeah,
have the mileage on there either, like,
right.
how many times have you guys asked me, like, "How far have we gone?" I'm
Yeah, I
like,
don't
"I
know.
don't know."
Yeah.
Like
But this is why we train like the way you do, because you find those things, like, what works for you and what doesn't. Like, go out and do a training ride sometime and, like, just strip the data down to, like, what you just said, Travis. Strip the data down to just power and heart rate. That's it. Nothing else.
Yeah,
Nothing else matters.
yep,
So power and heart, and maybe, if you're doing intervals or something, you need something to give you some sense of, like, the interval time, but power and heart rate, that's it. And maybe, honestly, probably unless you're training with heart rate, you don't need heart rate, just need power,
yeah.
you know?
And you
So,
just go. Like, I mean, there's a lot of times, that's called like you're just riding without any data. You just put it in your back pocket and it just records, and you just
yeah,
go out and ride. Like that's a great way to like just kind of um, reset your whole outlook. You just go out and have fun.
that's a
Remember to have fun. You
that's a
know.
really good segue to the next thing then, because I we're starting to go there a second ago, but that's a really good segue, because a lot of what we talked about was sort of in the moment negativity,
Yeah.
and then that can pile up, and then it turns into a motivation problem where it's like, I just don't even wanna ride. I don't wanna run. I don't wanna swim. I don't want to.
Yeah. I don't
And
want to do any of this. This is just
you know
this
what
is
you know
lame.
what I do wanna do? I wanna sit on the couch, and I wanna enjoy sitting on the couch, and that's it. But
Yeah.
I think that, you bring up a really good point, because you can get wrapped up in the data, and you start thinking about all "Oh, I didn't do that workout right." I still do it. I mean, we're all guilty of something. I still will look at my data sometimes and go, "I didn't do that workout quite like it prescribed." I hit a stop sign and I was 10 seconds short on my interval, and it's just like, that doesn't matter, but it does matter to me, because that's just somehow I think sometimes. But all these negative things can pile up and turn motivation low. And sometimes you just throw the data away and just go out and do it for fun. That's what you got to remember what you came into this for. You came into it to have
Yeah.
fun. And
Yeah.
so, but sometimes even that doesn't work. And you're like, gosh, I'm just not motivated for any of this. I just don't really want to do it anymore. And been there, done that. It's not a good place to be. And it's a pretty risky place to be, really, because you can find yourself breaking some of the really good habits it took so long to instill. And so I
Yep.
think I think it's really important, like, when you notice this situation, like, you've got to address it quickly, and don't force it. But maybe let's talk a little bit about how have we handled, because we have all I mean, we've both been there many, many, many times where the motivation is just 0 or negative. So
Yeah.
how do you get out of that? Like, how do you get out of the funk?
Well, it's kind of one of those things, like, is it a light funk, or is it is it an underlying, like, major funk, you
Yeah.
know? Like, for the light stuff, I usually this is me, this is kinda how I do it is, like, let's say it's, I don't wanna run today. Like, today's workout was that you're supposed to go out and do intervals, and I just don't wanna do any of that. Like, I don't wanna run at all. So what I'll usually do is, for that kind of thing is I will tell myself, well, if you go out and run, you get to listen to music,
Oh.
like it's just kind of like a reward, like because I don't train a lot with music, and I know there are people that train a lot with music, and so like I tend to be just like, well, I feel like music or a podcast or something like that is kind of a reward,
Mhm.
when you're working out. So, like, if my motivation is low and I don't want to do anything, like that little treat of, oh, um, if you go out and run right now, you get to you can do that whole run and you can listen to music, and then I go out and then I go out and do the run and I got the run done, and it's more
Well,
like
your negative self really needs to learn to bargain better. I mean, you gotta get more than music out of it. Like, get some ice cream or something out of it. Come
so
on.
the other thing is whenever I do a FTP test, I go out and get we have this place. It's one of my favorite places to eat. It's Longboards
Oh,
here,
yeah?
and it's like a Hawaiian burrito place, and
Yes.
I get some really good food. Like if they were closer to my house, I would probably weigh like uh 300 pounds easy because they are amazing, and
Watts
I
per
love.
kilo,
Yeah,
0.0.
exactly. Exactly. I would just eat I would just eat there all the time. So
Yeah.
my thing is like when I do like an FTP test, then I go and I get lunch there. That's my reward.
Oh,
So
there you go.
there's and I'm just like everybody else. I don't like to do FTP tests,
Mhm.
but you have to do them sometimes to kind of figure out where everything's at. So that's what I do when the motivation's low. Is you get yourself a reward. Like I mean, if that's like if you're jumping over the bike and you're like, I don't want to do the intervals, but if I do the intervals today, I'll go get myself an ice cream. If that's what you need, then heck yeah, do it.
Mhm.
It's that's that just doing something to get your just to get you kind of going and through the process, and then you get a little reward afterwards because you know grinding this stuff out day in day out it's a grind, and it does kind of wear you down, and if you don't reward yourself every once in a while, it, it just gets it just gets negative, and we get
Gets
kind of
there quick.
cranky, and yeah,
Mhm.
so
I think you bring up a good point though. I mean, there's like recognizing, is this just like a little temporary situation? You know, is it specific to the workout because I just don't want to do that workout, or is it maybe the training block I'm in? It just doesn't jive well with how I want to ride right now. You know, it's things like that. And I think that the rewards definitely help for like some of the things you mentioned, the FTP test, the intervals, and things like that. I think I've also found sometimes, like, I found myself just getting in the rut where it's like Tuesday is my interval day, Wednesday is a lighter day, Thursday is another interval or threshold day,
yeah, yeah.
Friday's an endurance day, Saturday's a hard day, Sunday's a long endurance day, and then it's like rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat, and it's just like, oh my gosh, so I just, you know what? I don't know. I don't know if there's science behind it or not. I don't really care. I'm gonna flip the schedule. You know what? I'm not gonna rest on a Monday. I'm just gonna get ahead of the week. We did this not long ago where we just started for randomly just doing a Monday ride just to get ahead of the week. And it felt,
Yep,
oh my gosh, it just opened up like that way by Thursday. If I didn't feel like riding, well, you know what? I'll move Thursday or I'm sorry, Wednesday. I move my Wednesday ride out to Friday. I can move things around a little bit. And it just gave you so much more flexibility. So sometimes you just need to like just shuffle it up a little bit, you know,
yeah,
get out of that rut because a schedule is a rut. It is.
yep.
Like if you didn't need like a schedule is a necessary evil. If you didn't need a schedule, you wouldn't make one. You just do
Yep,
it. So like sometimes you got to switch it up a little bit and see if that helps. I mean, it sounds so simple. It is. It's very simple. Sometimes those are the most effective things to do. So,
yep. Just kind of like maybe it's just the grind of like, oh, this is my swim run day. This is my bike, my bike
mhm,
run day. This is this. And it's just like if you can be like, you know what, you know, I'll do the run before I do the bike or something like
yeah,
that. Like just throwing some change in there, it just helps keep everything fresh because like you said, it just by the time you get to like you're like, "Oh my gosh, another Saturday long ride. Let's freaking, go. Like please
right,
hit me with a car,
right,
somebody."
right.
Like it just gets to that point where you're just the grind of doing it every weekend, wake out. You're just like, okay, I'm making gains. I'm doing progress, but like it's mentally, it's getting numbing and not stimulating. And like you said, like sometimes we would change up and we would ride on a Monday, and then we didn't feel so bad if we had to take a Thursday or Friday
Right.
off. You know.
And I think we did this in excuse me, in the triathlon training we did a couple of times too with the swims. We would, you know, instead of doing like a Saturday swim. We'd move the swim to Sunday, and we'd also not always do swim, bike, run. Sometimes we would do bike, run, and then let's go hit the swim later and cool off, use it as a cool down kind of thing.
Yeah.
And again, it's because I think it's totally different when you're talking about the Ironman type training because we talk about a lot. It's you've got to focus on all three sports, and that can just you can get the pressure starts to build up. Like, oh my gosh, how am I going to fit all this in? And just that can be demotivating. And so I think giving yourself that flexibility. And I'm not a morning workout person. You're not going to find me waking up at 4 a.m. to do the swim or the run. And I think I did last year a couple of months because it was a necessity. There was no other option because of the pool availability, but and with my work. But for the most part, I would say giving yourself that flexibility and like if you know what, maybe try waking up at 4 a.m. sometime. See if it
Yeah.
changes your perspective a little bit. It can help. I mean, I never was a morning workout person until we started doing some of the swim training, and after about a couple of weeks of it, you don't really care so much anymore. But
Yeah, you just go get it
just
done,
do
and
it.
then it's kinda nice to just have your workouts done already,
Check it off the
you know?
list. It's done.
Yeah, it's the first thing done in the day. You haven't even had breakfast yet, and your workouts are
I
done, and you're just like, "I'm done.
I'd
Alright,
get in a
sweet.
I'd
I
get
don't
in a
have to
meeting.
stress."
Yeah. I'd get in a meeting for work and, people were just finishing their first cup of coffee and, they're like, "So how's your morning been?" I'm like, "I already got like 2,000 yards into the pool. I'm okay."
Yeah, I'm
Like,
doing alright.
I'm doing okay. How long did it take you to tell somebody you're doing a triathlon?
Yeah, exactly, 4
About
minutes.
4
4 minutes. Yeah, so and then, another thing that I do too is, like, especially, like, bike racing, like, if I don't wanna do intervals, a
Oh,
lot of
that's a
times
great
I'll
one.
watch some bike
Yeah.
races and,
Yeah.
just the thought of, like, you know, yes, I understand I'm not pro and not going to be pro, but, like, the fact that, like, if you're watching a bike race and then those guys are trying, going real hard, like especially like during your interval, you're like,
Mhm.
oh, this interval is representative, like climbing this little hill that they're climbing that, they're racing up, like, and it just kind of gives you a little extra motivation to to just complete the workout. Or like maybe you're like, oh, I triathlon has just kind of been a drag lately, but then you turn on like the T100 series and see these guys, the pro level, the they're they're there just out there just hammering, and that kind of like inspires you to just, you know what? I'm going to go do my workout. I'm going to
That's
be,
right.
like those guys. I'm going to go and get it done. And sometimes that can be motivating, just watching somebody else do the thing that you're wanting to do, and it helps get you through the times when you're just not motivated.
Yeah.
So,
What about what about situations where you might be like borderline and in a bit of a burnout state? Because I mean that can be a part of it too, right? You've been
yeah,
training for an
exactly.
event. Yeah.
If you find yourself like trying to motivate yourself, like let's say like once a week, I would say motivation, like having a reward, watching some pros, or doing something that, like, yeah, that on average probably like one workout a week. I need a little extra
Little
motivation. That's
boost.
fine.
Yeah.
Little boost. Just I'm just not feeling it that day. Whatever. Um, but, like, if you're doing that almost, let's say 2, 3 times a week, then that would be
Or
indicative of
you're
just
doing it before the easy ride. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you're trying to postpone the easy ride, like your recovery ride, and it says,
Yeah.
"Don't go hard," and, like, you're just like, "I can't do this. I can't turn the pedals," or it's like, go out for a 30-minute walk, jog thing, and you're just like, I can't even, no, not even," and you do that like 3 or 4 times a week, then, you're basically approaching burnout, and just you definitely need to, 1, if you have a coach, let your coach know about that, or 2,
Mhm.
you need to, um, just take, uh I would say anywhere from 20 to 48 hours of just off. Like,
Yeah.
you're not training, you're not thinking about training, you're not on the Facebook page of the site that or the event that you're doing. So like if you're doing Unbound and you find yourself like in the middle of burnout for Unbound, you're going to cut yourself off from
Yeah.
social media.
Yep.
You're basically just going to, tell all your training partners that, hey, I need to take a little break. And you're going to reset for like 2 days of just nothing other than eating food and kind of relaxing and taking it easy because like in the end, like this is fun. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, a challenge, but something that you can manage. And if you're getting burnt out, like, especially for my athletes, if I ever hear them say like, "Oh, this is hard. I'm very stressed." I start going into their training peaks and I slash the crap
Yeah.
out of their workouts. Like,
Yeah.
you know, um, Serena was saying that she had a lot of, stress this week with, kids and all that stuff. I started going into her training peaks and started like hiding workouts and,
Dialed it back.
cutting the stuff way, way back because, again, stress is stress. And so if you're stressed out at home, that transfers into training stress. So like we don't want to add more training stress onto your already stressed life. Like
Yeah.
we need to cut all that stuff back.
I think too,
So,
people have this tendency tendency to sit there and, "Oh my gosh, I can't take a day off because I'll lose my gains and I'll fall behind." And it's like, no, that's not how it works. And
if
I think it's like a really good example because like if you just
yeah,
say,
if
"Hey, you know what, we're gonna."
anything, if
Yeah,
you've been training consistently and you've been doing, putting in the work, heck, you might find a fitness bump from taking 2 days off. You
exactly.
might come back and you might be
Strong. Mhm.
very strong and you're just like, "Holy, okay."
Yeah.
And
I
that can
think
be
that's
motivating too. And just being okay with like, you know, taking that time off. You're not losing,
yeah.
your months and months of gains.
I think that's a really important point. I think, again, folks can sort of get caught up in, oh my gosh, I've got to, because I was, we've all followed different type of regiments, and that's very, it's structured. It's every single day. You got to do this, got to do this, got to do this. And it's like, there's the insinuation is if I miss one of those, then I'm somehow failing. And then that just compounds onto the motivation problem. Cause like, well, I've missed out on 3 days. I might as well just give up now. It just makes it
Yeah,
all
better just
worse. It
throw
just,
in the whole towel. We're done.
that's right.
Let me call and see if I can get some of my money back. Like
That's
I've
right.
missed 2 workouts in a row,
Yep.
like
Yep.
it's that's not how it
No,
works.
it doesn't work
It's
that way. I mean,
yeah.
you say 24 to 48 hours, and I would even say, hey, if it takes a week, it takes a week. Like, it's not much different than if you're having like a physical illness. You
Yep.
you can't train if you have a certain physical illness that prevents you from training. So guess what? When you come back from that, 99% of the time, if it's only a week, you come right back where you left off. And
Yep.
if not, then you're back where you were within a few days. It does not take very long to get back to where you should be. So I think it's important. It's so important if you're kind of finding yourself in that situation. You gotta just take the necessary time. Everything's gonna be fine. You come back and back at it, have fun. That's all. That's
Yep.
all. Like you said, that's what we got here for anyway. So,
Yeah. Exactly.
um, anything else on that? I think that one's pretty good one. That's
No,
a
I
that's a
think
really
yeah,
important one.
the
Yeah.
motivation one, like I really use that as a metric to see how the athletes are doing, whether or not they're
Mhm.
motivated to hit their workouts, if they're overly motivated or, or they're in their training peaks, they're like, "Oh, you know what? This I'm just too tired and stuff is this." And I'm like, "Okay, we need to dial back stuff." So it's like constant balancing act of, just applying the right amount of stress and it's okay to be not motivated for your event. That's totally fine. Like I know sign up day, when you sign up for the event, you're like the motivation is
Y
high, but eventually the motivation wears off and now you're left with your
y
discipline and
yeah.
what else you can do
Y
to keep
you
moving
are,
forward.
you're hitting a little too close to home, Travis. That sounds like me in the Mesa Marathon of 2024. Like, when we signed up for it last year, I was gung ho, ready to go, but man, when we got into actual training, I was not motivated to do it. I was done after Ironman, after doing gravel events in the fall. I was done, but,
Yeah.
you know what? It didn't throw in the towel, just, made the best of it, and turned out it is actually a pretty dang good day. So,
Yeah, I think we knew about mid-November that it wasn't going to be a stellar
right.
performance. So we just basically said, you know what, if we can just commit to doing, you know, our long runs and getting in the few weekly workouts that we need to do, we're gonna be okay.
That's right.
And then we just committed to that. We're not gonna be setting any, world records or like we did set PRs for sure, but we weren't going into the event thinking that we were going to PR. We were just going to into the event of just thinking if we went 1 second faster than we did the last time, then
It's good
that
enough.
was
Yeah.
good enough.
That's a win
So
because we knew the
that's
training was not where it needed to be to produce
yep.
that kind of result, but it somehow
Yeah,
yeah.
and the training wasn't bad. It by all intents and purposes, the run volume was a lot higher than it was the year before, but what we would always focus on and what I always harp on with athletes is your consistency. Like,
Mhm.
how consistently are you doing your, Tuesday tempo runs? How consistently are you doing your, Thursday strides? How are you is your long run, um, feeling like it should? Like, are you consistently hitting these key workouts? And we just weren't consistently hitting the same key
That's right.
workouts every week. And it just the run volume was there, but the key workouts to make us run that marathon faster just weren't there. So
Yep. So I think, we kinda covered the different pieces and parts of sort of the short term, challenges and the negativity of the mental training can help you get past, and then, if that negativity sort of in the moment turns into, more of a long-term motivation problem, kinda covered how we've experienced getting out of it, and I mean, don't get me wrong, we deal with this all the time, like, I mean, just in the last week, I was definitely
yeah,
feeling that lack of motivation because guess what? I was coming up on a recovery week and so I was kind of done when we hit that Sunday ride. I was done, but now recovery week is here. It's been very nice. I feel refreshed. I'm ready to go ride this weekend, and so just taking that time to make sure that you're addressing any of the challenges you're having with your motivation. And then I think the last thing that we, really want to cover is like, at the end of the day, there's a reason we do this.
right.
And, I think just having that understanding, the why is will carry you through almost every one of these challenges.
Yeah. Just having that why, I like to um write down the why, and then I have this, like, I don't know, 4x4 beam that's above my bike trainer and my treadmill, and I put a little sticky note of the why on there. And so, like, we're training for Unbound or whatever, and my why is, like, to, like, show my kids, like, what hard work and dedication
Mhm.
mean, and like how hard it is, and 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 then it also has, my goal or whatever. But, like, they see me working hard at this stuff, and now, like, the kids, they wanted to start swimming at the um at the community center with me. So we go and we swim, and they finally get to see, like, they're like, "Oh man, this isn't what you do, Dad, is not, like, easy.
Right.
What you do for fun is not easy." And they finally get to see, that kind of stuff. And the why is just, having that there, like, you can put it on, like I said, I put it above my trainer. You can put it on your mirror in your bathroom or in your wallet or whatever. But having that why and just kind of, like, makes it like it doesn't have to be, oh, so my kids know that, that I'm dedicated or whatever. Like, whatever your why is, it's totally personal to you. But, like, I prefer to have something, like, tangible, like, written out. I know some people, like, put it on their phone, or it's
Mhm.
like on their lock screen, or, it's on their, it's like on a, in a digital format or something like that. I just kind of like the fact of writing it out and, like, taking the time and thinking about it and, like, putting it, somewhere that you kind of just see it all the time. And
Yeah.
it just kind of helps
That reminder.
reinforce that. Yeah. Of that it just kind of makes it worth it.
Yeah, we've got, a few of our friends that talk about, I don't know if this is necessarily their why, but it's one of the reasons. And it's like because we get to,
Yep.
and because we can. And I think like you said, there are you can have multiple whys. It doesn't have to come down to just one, it doesn't have to be this, have to sit here and like wring your hands over, oh my gosh, I can't figure out my why. It can be something very simple and you can have several of them. And I think quite honestly, there's a lot of people that don't get to do the things that we get to do. And
No,
it
yeah,
could be a number of reasons for that. It could be because they're just flat out lazy, don't want to. That's okay. Everybody has life choices. They can do what they want. That's fine. But there's also a lot of people that would kill to have the opportunity to do the things that we can do, and maybe they
right,
can't because of some kind of impairment, and or something that luck just wasn't on their side, and they don't have the ability. And I mean that, like, they could have disability of some type, or anything. And it's like, you know what, we get the opportunity to do this, and we get to experience a lot of really, really cool things and a lot of really good people along the way. So I mean, that carries me through so much, because can't tell you how many times you think back to, how you get into an event and you just think about the stories you hear from people we know, or people that, you read about, and it's inspiring in a lot of ways. And I mean, how many times we ride an event and you see somebody who, is, maybe has a disability, but they're out there doing it with you, and you're like, "Oh my, you're kicking the crap out of me, and you're amazing." It's
yeah,
like, and then, I can remember just some of my very first early running days, when we lived in Florida, and running in, like, the local 5Ks, and seeing, a lot of the firefighters and, former military, maybe current active duty, like, wearing full gear running the 5K, and just how I'm just like, "They make this look so easy." Of course, they're trained, but it's like they're out here doing this not because they have to, and so
right,
I think that you could find inspiration no matter where you look, and that's what, for me personally, that's kinda what keeps me going through it. But I think there's, at any moment, there's always a good number of reasons why. But when it gets to, like, some of the hardest moments, and I feel like just kind of throwing in the towel on it, I come back to one of those sort of, emotional stories that gets me kinda worked up, and then I'm like, "All right, we're gonna get this thing done." And that's
yeah,
it. I don't have to think about it much anymore after that. So,
yep, yeah, exactly. Just like that, holding on to that why, whatever that is, to you personally and stuff is huge and can help get you through the times. Because in reality, yeah, we get to do this stuff and we choose to do this stuff, and eventually, or we won't be able to do this stuff. So
we
the
just had
way
that
I see it,
conversation the other day, didn't we?
yeah,
Yeah.
I was just like, eventually, one of these days, not anytime soon, hopefully, but eventually you won't be able to do this stuff. You'll be, you know, retired on a beach in Florida, drinking, you know,
Fa
mimosas or whatever.
Father Time is
Yeah,
undefeated.
father time. Yeah, there's, death and taxes are the only two things you can't escape. And so, uh, Serena's kids told her, like, when she was signing up for Ironman, was that, you want to be able, when you're old and, in the nursing home, or, you're not doing this stuff anymore, you want to be able to look back at yourself and just say, yeah, I did, when I had the chance, I did it. I
That's
did the
right.
things that were hard. And that was my why,
Yeah,
because I could, you know?
it's good
And
stuff.
so, yeah, that's some good stuff for sure. It's yeah. So just remembering the why, and just keeping yourself going, and just that mental training, it's one of those things that, like, if you don't work on it, if you don't put yourself in these situations, there's not a chance for you to work on it. And us as humans, we always want the easy way out. We always want it to be comfortable. We always, we don't seek the hard things. And unfortunately, it's only the hard times that we kind of can really appreciate the good times. So,
Well said. I think we're
yeah.
good. That's a great way to end it, 'cause, can't say any better myself.
Yeah. So, all right, man. So, suffer complete. Good job. But thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, please comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you have ideas for topics, questions, or would like coaching, please email SufferSooner@gmail.com. And remember, sometimes you just have to suffer sooner.